Well, it looks like the national media might be trying to come around. Rich Eisen, he's really kind of all in on the Browns a little bit. His best case scenario is the Browns can win the Super Bowl. What's the change of heart? We're going to examine this coming up in this episode of the Ultimate Browns. You stay right there. Welcome on in to the fastest 30 minutes in all of sports. It's your Monday's edition of the Ultimate Browns. Come on in. We got a jam-packed show as always for you. We come and we talk about, coming up a little bit later in the show, David Njoku's contract revisited. If you watched last Friday's episode, you know I told you. I said, not so fast. We talked about Jerry Jeudy's situation in his contract and why when people jump on contracts all early, talk about, oh my goodness, he ain't worth it. Well, now the chickens have come home to roost. We would revisit what people said about David Njoku's contract. And is there any parallels to them jumping the gun on Jerry Jeudy? We'll talk about that. I'm excited about that topic. Nick Chubb finally speaks. Nick Chubb has spoken. He doesn't say very much. The guys on UCSS will take a look at this, and they talk about, what does a timetable actually look like and when he should be able to play. I have a unique perspective on this, having 2 ACL injuries, a PCL injury, and over 17 or 18 major surgeries in my short college and high school football career. I'll tell you why you shouldn't be that anticipatory when it comes to Nick Chubb playing week 1. We'll get into that. But you know what you signed up for. You know what you clicked on this video for. Rich Eisen. Rich Eisen is actually all in on the Browns. I wouldn't say he's all in, but he does seem a little more optimistic than he was. If you watch any of my videos, one of my videos that I did a couple years ago was how hard he was. Rich Eisen was going hard at Deshaun Watson. So, you know me, I was just like, look, man, look, you got to keep the same energy, Rich. Keep this same energy. So shout out to him. This video is courtesy of Rich Eisen and over there. And he talks about, don't be surprised if this is the best case scenario. He's kind of projecting best case scenario for the Cleveland Browns in the headlines. And if these headlines hit, he's like, listen, don't be surprised. The Browns can make a run at this Super Bowl. Check this out.
Best case scenario for the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson returns to his form, and he's a finalist for the most valuable player. Okay. Nick Chubb wins comeback player of the year.
That would be nice.
And then Myles Garrett leads the league in sacks. Again, I'm not going defensive player of the year. That's for you, JJ. And guess what? They win the division. First time since 1989. They win their division.
The number.
And they're the ones who eliminate the Chiefs. And Deshaun Watson, let's say he goes up by like 24, holds on to that lead in Arrowhead, and wins the Super Bowl.
Oh, my.
The Browns get their Super Bowl.
Wow. Down to Armageddon.
I'm telling you, you think the Browns can't win the Super Bowl this year as a best case scenario? You got to check yourself.
Wow.
Look, he's standing on business. Now look, he told you, don't be laughing. See, it's a lot of dudes out there, and this is what happens sometimes, and I get it. The national media is not watching every single team out there. They're watching the top 3 or 4 stories, taking a look at the Cowboys, the 49ers, the New York teams, the LA teams, things like that. They're not paying attention to the Browns all that much. So there are some people that would laugh and joke it off and say, I said Browns being the Browns. But if you look at his scenario that he laid out there, and he says, if Deshaun Watson is a MVP finalist in 2023. Well, let me take a look at who was finalists for the MVP in 2023. Lamar Jackson, who ended up winning the MVP again. 3,678 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 821 rushing yards, 5 TDs. Jackson Powder, Baltimore offense that ranked first in rushing and led all quarterbacks and marked his 5th season averaging more than 5 yards per carry, right? Josh Allen, 4,306 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, 18 interceptions, 69.6 QBR rating, 524 yards rushing, 15 touchdowns on the ground. Who else? Dak Prescott, 4,500 yards passing, 36 touchdowns, only 9 interceptions, 72.7 QBR, 242 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Brock Purdy, 4,280 passing yards, 31 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 72.7 QBR, 144 rushing yards, and 2 TDs. Now, if Deshaun Watson is a finalist, if you're doing the math right there, you're looking at somewhere about 4,000 some odd yards, somewhere above 30 touchdowns, and under 15 interceptions. You also looking about somewhere about 300 to 400 yards rushing, and maybe 6 or 7 touchdowns on the ground. If that is the MVP type season, and if they get that from Deshaun Watson, y'all in trouble. Y'all, if you get that from Deshaun Watson, you are in trouble. Because you know what? The Browns defense is going to do their thing. They're going to do what it make it do. Don't get it twisted. He also said Myles Garrett leads the league in sacks, right? Let's take a look at that. NFL sack leaders. Just go ahead and look this up really quick. NFL sack leaders. Let's look at it. Pro Football Focus. Let's look, per year. Let's look at it. Who did that? NFL sack leaders year by year. So let's look at just the last 5 years. Let's look at the last 5 years and then look at it. In 2018, Aaron Donald had 20 and a half sacks. 2019, Shaquille Barrett had 19 and a half sacks. 2020, TJ Watt had 15. 2021, TJ Watt had 22 and a half. Dang. 2021 that was. 2022, Nick Bosa had 18 and a half. And in 2023, TJ Watt had 19. If you average those together, you're looking at somewhere about 19, 20 sacks almost. So you telling me Myles Garrett had 20 sacks too? Oh, y'all playing around. Are you playing around? So you telling me, best case scenario, he said, this is what he told me. Deshaun Watson is an MVP finalist. We know what that looks like. 40-something, over 4,000 yards, over 30 touchdowns, under 12 interceptions, about 300 on the ground. Maybe a couple TDs there. He said best case scenario with the with Myles Garrett leading the league in sacks. We look at the last 5 or 6 years, that means it's somewhere between 18, 19, 20 sacks if you average the last 6 years for the sack leaders. And he also said Nick Chubb wins comeback player of the year. Nick Chubb win comeback player of the year. Let's take a look at who's won comeback player of the year. Yeah, I forgot. Flaccavelli won that last year. Flaccavelli won that last year. Yes, he did. Last 4 people that have won it. Geno Smith. Geno Smith won it in 2022. Joe Flacco won it in 2023. Joe Burrow won it in 2021. Alex Smith, 2020. Ryan Tannehill, 2019. These are all quarterbacks. In order for him to win comeback player of the year, he's going to have over 1,000 yards. I would say 1,000 yards. Some would say probably 9 or 10 touchdowns to be comeback player of the year. If he gets over 1,000 yards and Nick Chubb has come back off injury, that tells me a lot. That tells me that the Cleveland Browns are running the football effectively. Nick Chubb is balling, and the offensive line is intact. Garrison Hurst won comeback player of the year in 2001. Didn't Adrian Peterson win this? This is the Associated Press NFL comeback player of the year. This is on Wikipedia, so it should be good. I don't see him. This is predominantly a quarterback-driven situation. So for me, that means he's going to have 1,100 yards. He got to have over 1,000. He got to really have a splash. He got to have double-digit touchdowns. And if Nick Chubb comes back that way, and you got him and Myles Garrett leading the league in sacks, and you got Deshaun Watson that is throwing for that many yards, Cleveland Browns is definitely a Super Bowl contending team, and it's going to be a problem. It's definitely going to be a problem. They get all that. So, I think one of the things that you look at when he made this comment is now you're starting to see, you're definitely starting to see guys come around. You seeing that people are starting to realize the Cleveland Browns are just much more than just whether Deshaun Watson does something. They're looking and saying, well, damn, man, this is a damn good roster. Got some nice running backs. I like Deontay Foreman. I like, Jerome Ford. I like Hines. I like, some of the receivers. They upgraded a receiver. Njoku's turning out to be something. Solid offensive line. The defense, you know what it is. Now people are starting to, now you see it's starting to turn over these talking points, because now they're actually looking at the paper and they're like, listen, man, I'm looking at this paper, this depth chart, and there ain't no holes. There's no holes to be had in this depth chart. There's just not. So I think a lot of people now in the league is starting to turn around too. The league is starting to say, hey, man, the Browns are pretty good. Put them on TV. And that's when the national media kind of like follows along, because after that, what you start to see is it's validation, right? A lot of people, like, it's like polls, right? And sometimes you got to realize that even with polling, like I watch polling data for political runoffs and different things like the presidential election or different things like that. The media can sway polling, because if you say something long enough, oh, so-and-so, I think he's going to be, think so-and-so's down. I think right now people are kind of, they don't want to hear what he got to say, or this is a negative impact on him. I think it's going to hurt him. I think it's going to hurt him. And then pretty soon you start to see the polling data follow that. Right now, when the NFL signals, hey, we've lifted the Browns off the blackball list, right? And they announced that by the Cowboys game, putting it on in the 4:30 game, then people will start coming around. They do a lot of virtue signaling that way. If you end up with 6 or 7 primetime games, all of a sudden you're not that bad anymore, because the league is putting you on for a reason. Remember that, boys and girls. Let's get to our first break. When we come back, we'll talk about Nick Chubb. Rich Eisen said if he wants to become back player of the year, that's a best case scenario. And Tyvis and the group and Jason Lloyd and Adam the Bull talked about Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb actually spoke to the media for the first time in a long time. They'll give you their takeaways from it, and they opine on whether or not he'll be ready for week 1. I'm gonna tell you why I would pump the brakes. We'll come back and do that. It's G. Bush right here on the Ultimate Browns. Let's talk about the great people over at FanDuel. It is NBA Finals, Maverick versus the Celtics, and now you got the NHL Stanley Cup Finals as well. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 in win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's secure and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/UCSS and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the fastest 30 minutes in all of sports. Your boy G. Bush, rocking and rolling. Hit that subscribe button, man. It's free. Hit that like button. It's free. Help us get this content and this Browns content to all the other individuals out there in the YouTube spectrum. So we'll definitely appreciate your support. I appreciate you making us a part of your each and every Monday and Friday over here at Ultimate Browns. Nick Chubb spoke to the media, and Nick Chubb, talked about being glad to be back. And just said he was taking it one day at a time in terms of his rehab, and that's to be expected. Adam the Bull in the cast over at UCSS, and Tyvis Powell and Jason Lloyd talked about the idea of when Nick Chubb might be back, and if week 1 is off the table.
We heard Nick talk about he's not practicing yet. He's ramping up to get to able to practice. Do you think we'll see him in a Browns uniform for week 1? Has that changed after hearing him talk yesterday? Your thoughts on whether or not he'll be available?
I mean, the fact that he's not practicing, I guess my first thought was, well, no, he's not going to be ready for week 1. And then I'm thinking about it again, and I'm saying, well, we're still little over 3 months from the start of the regular season. Nick Chubb does not need to practice. He does not need – correct me if you think I'm wrong, Tyvis. I don't think he needs to practice. I don't think he needs to play in the preseason.
He ain't doing that no way.
I think in theory, if he's able to practice a little a couple of weeks before the season, then he's good to. If he feels like he's good to go, yeah, I think it's possible he can play week 1.
I think that the thing when you talk about an injury at this standpoint, the number one thing for me is his mindset. They can tell him you're 100% clear, but he still might not be the same. And until he feels that contact, till he gets out there and he practices with the team and be able to do cuts and stuff like that, he'll truly know when he's ready. Yeah. And I think it might take a while. I know how dedicated he is. I know how if anybody can bounce back from this injury, it could be Nick Chubb. But when you just give all of the things that went into that injury, I just think it's going to take a while. And the fact that he's not practicing now, I think he's just starting to run, correct? I think he's just now running.
There's video of him running on tracks.
Yeah. So, I just think it's going to take a while. And that cutting part of it, what made Nick Chubb is making guys miss, being able to cut, and being able to get vertical right now. I just don't think he's going to be there. And if he's not going to be that person out the gate, or if it's going to take him a while, I think they don't need to rush him back out there.
I think Tyvis took the lead on that conversation, and I think Tyvis is 1,000% correct. And I think I can give a unique perspective on ACL injuries because I've had 2 of them, 1 on each knee. I've also had injuries other than my ACL, my MCL and my PCL as well. I've had meniscus. I've had cartilage damage in both. I've had my knee drained with fluid on my knee over 100 times. I've been through rehab multiple times. So I can give you a unique perspective on what a timetable kind of looks like, but at the same time, not giving you something that is going to be that I'm trying to hold Nick Chubb back or say that he's not going to be able to come back and be better than he was before. I'm just giving you a perspective of somebody who's had an injury. So to give you the perspective of my first injury, and I'm kind of dating myself here, my first injury that I ever had, torn ACL, was a contact cut. I got cut by a running back who was cutting inside, coming back towards the line of scrimmage. That block is illegal. It was a little bit of a gray area, and we were playing NC State back then. We was actually playing against Phillip Rivers and NC State. That was in 2001. That's so long ago. But when I got hit, it was just like that content. It was something like the contact that Nick Chubb had, because it was a helmet to the lower body, right on the side of the knee, caved it, and it kind of buckled underneath me. So I've had that injury when it comes to basically being hit in the area and tearing the ligament. And I've also the second time, less than I think I came back in 8 months. So I had that happen, and it's so funny. You remember surgeries like they was your children. So I had that surgery on December 13th, 2021. Excuse me, 2021. December 13th, 2001, right? And so I rehabbed it. I had surgery, rehabbed it, and I was ready to go back for 2 days. So I got back and I started back playing football. It was braced up in August. I go through 2 days. 2 days was like a month or about 6 weeks, right? And we're getting ready to, in our last little scrimmage, getting ready for playing Pitt. Pitt was our first game of the year. I went to make a cut. The running back was moving. He cut the ball back, and I went to plant. And I made a cut and blew my other knee out. So I had 2 ACLs within 8-month period, 2 ACL surgeries within an 8-month period. And the one thing that Tyvis talks about is actually true. It's not the knee that you worry about the most that just got repaired. There's a lot of times where when you're a 2 ACL type person, you end up tearing your other ACL. And so for me, what happened to me was, everything has to be about balance. Everything has to be about symmetry. And as a running back, I was a defensive lineman. I'm not sprinting long distances and making big cuts and being explosive inside the box. The most explosion I have is off the line of scrimmage, which is a step and a half. But I even know the apprehensiveness that you have from making strong cuts. I was a basketball player, played basketball in high school, and I always loved playing basketball. But after the ACL surgery, it took me almost 3 years to trust that I can make a cut on a surface that does not give like a basketball court and not tear something. That is the thing that a lot of people, it's the mental part of it. It's, you've been wired so long to put maximum force, maximum effort, being able to cut and put that much torque on your lower body and knees and able to do it without thinking, it's just natural. Now he's going to think. And it's the biggest mind in the world trying to get back over that. It's not necessarily that you're hurt. It's not necessarily your knee's going to blow out. It's not necessarily that you don't have the same ability. The reality of it is, it's teaching you to play 100% ready to go and never thinking about cutting, never thinking about it, just being an athlete. And for every injury that you have, it takes a little bit away. You may get back and maybe 98%. You may come back and you have an injury and now you can get to 96%. You may have another injury, you'll be at 94%, right? All of those times you have injury, it's not only taking a toll on your body, but it takes a toll on your mental psyche, right? And so for Nick Chubb being a running back and a person who's now gone through this twice, it's also another big burden because now you're thinking about, okay, wow, like, I could really be hurt. Like I could really get hurt. Not saying he's scared or anything, but when you're a running back, every single time you touch the ball, either you score or you're going to get hit. Right? You touch the ground. Somebody hits you every play. And so you got to think about that. And when I look at it from a term of Nick Chubb and what the timetable for me is, what you have to do as a Browns organization is you almost have to think the first part of the season is a red shirt. There was even if he was ready to play week 1, I wouldn't play him. You know why? Because to me, just from my experience, not putting nothing on him, because I know Adrian Peterson came back and it was tremendous. You want to be mind, body, and soul ready to go. And if you have any doubts in your mind about your health, don't go out there because you're going to end up getting injured again. They should put him on a red shirt. He should come back week 10. And whatever he gives you from week 10 on is great. You know why? He'll be fresh. He'll be anxious to get back out there, and he'll be mentally prepared. And he's going to be fresher than everybody else because he hasn't played that far. And then anything you get from Nick Chubb from there, you can use that as your free agent. You can use that as a guy who's going to give you a shot in the arm. And then when you bring him back, you bring him back slowly. You can bring him back and ramp him up to a point where he gets to the playoffs. And now he's in rare form. Now he's in good shape, right? Now he's gotten hit back and forth. But I wouldn't attempt to play him the first 8-9 weeks. I just wouldn't do it. Because, you're putting him in a position where he already has a lot of pressure on himself. And I want to make sure not only the biggest thing for me is not the whether he can do it. It's now the maintenance that goes into it. Does he have any swelling in the knee after practices? Does he have to get more treatment? Is it a knee that becomes arthritic? I got one knee that's great. My left one is awesome. The right one is arthritic. It gets puffy. It rains. It's a rain time machine. Every time it rains, this knee get big. It gets swollen. It gets angry. So are you going to have some of that in a knee? Do you have to maintenance it? What about his practice times, right? What about he was already on a pitch count last year to start with. So all these things you got to think of. For me, I guarantee he's not going to be, I'm about 90% sure he's not going to play week 1, nor should he. I'm thinking of Nick Chubb somewhere way down the line where he can make sure he understands what he's getting into and that he can be fully prepared mentally, physically, and spiritually to go out and give it what he can. There's times where you say certain things and they don't age well. We got some freezing cold takes from the UCSS archives where they talked about David Njoku's contract. And boy, this take aged horribly. But this also not only goes about David Njoku, this could tell us a lot about the ways we talk about contracts going in the future, specifically with Jerry Jeudy. When we come back, we get to that. It's G. Bush right here on the UCSS network. Well, we don't just talk football here. We get into every single sport every Monday. Ultimate Guardians, Zach Meisel and Adam the Bull. We definitely get to the Cavs, man. Every single Tuesday, you got Mikey McNuggets as well as Jason Lloyd of The Athletic. Earl the Pearl is on Thursday, Ultimate 216. And, of course, your boy, G. Bush, every Monday and Friday. Make sure you subscribe to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show YouTube channel so you know when all of our videos are coming out so you don't miss a beat. David Njoku. We know what David Njoku is today. We know what he did at the end of the season with Flaccavelli. We understand what type of target David Njoku is. But sometimes you got to remind people. People be doing this. I don't like when people are doing this neither. They be telling you, you know what? Nobody could have understood whether or not David Njoku was going to be this good. Liars. Maybe you didn't understand. But your boy G. Bush over here, I told you. And let this serve as a lesson for those that is talking about Jerry Jeudy, because you might end up in the same boat.
I don't get it. I think.
Well, they haven't. But the reports are, set it up this way. The reports are they're going to give him a $13 million a year extension.
I was surprised they actually put him on the franchise tag, to be honest. I think he's just a guy at tight end. He's a tremendous athlete. He has never been a great player. He's frankly been a below average tight end in the first 4 years.
I'm okay
of his
with
career.
the franchise tag.
I don't want it, but
I don't
why
want an
would you give him
extension
an
that makes
extension?
it would make him in the top 5 highest paid tight ends in football.
There are like 3 or 4 tight ends worth a lot of money.
Well,
and
that's
he's not
the
one of
thing. This is a supply and demand issue.
Right.
There's just not a lot of very good tight
them.
ends.
But Jason,
I would not.
But he's had 5 years to prove that he's in that elite group, and to me, he has not done that.
The Bengals tight end last year, C.J. Uzomah, just signed with the Jets. Like, David Njoku's not any better than C.J. Uzomah. He's not.
But
they're in the same group.
But Stefanski values tight end. So if you
go
value
get another tight end, I don't have to pay $13 million a year to.
Well, he might like his skill set. Here's the thing: David Njoku is not garbage. Let's be clear.
He's garbage.
I mean,
agree.
he has a skill set. He's fast. He can get the ball.
He can't hold the ball.
He's had a lot of key
Just
drops.
don't hit him in the
big
hands.
moments.
Just don't hit him in the hands. Throw it 6 feet over his head. That's why Baker likes him so much.
I will say this: his value increased the second Deshaun Watson got on the team. So all your little small receivers and the receivers that don't really do anything, just think how they do with Aaron Rodgers. They go there and play with Aaron Rodgers, they're great.
But I'm not giving him an extension now. He's back. Let's see it.
Freezing cold takes. Listen, man, every single time we get to talking about money and how much somebody is worth, people forget that they actually gotta project certain things. I talked about this with Jerry Jeudy, and it's the same thing. All you have to do is substitute David Njoku's name and put Jerry Jeudy in, and it's the same conversation. He's inconsistent. He hasn't been balling. He hasn't done this. He's not as good as he thinks he is. Why do we have to pay him that $13 million? Well, guys, listen, the reason you don't do that, whether you do go ahead and pay those guys, is because you're projecting what those guys look like in your system. You're believing in your development. You're believing in what and projecting what you feel he's going to be able to do. I don't understand why baseball guys, now we got a panel, all those guys, Jason, Bull, Jay, all those guys are baseball guys. Why is it that you can understand the concept of liking a prospect in baseball in the minor leagues when we haven't seen him do it yet? But yet and still, you won't trade these prospects. You covet these prospects. You hold them in such high esteem. And you talk about, well, we love the fact that he has a great curveball and his fastball is at 98 miles an hour. Well, he hasn't won any games. It's just double A. It's just minor leagues. No, but we feel like that translates to the big leagues. You got a guy that doesn't necessarily hit for power, but they say, well, listen, he has a great swing. His exit velocity is good. He has a lot of loud outs, and I think he's going to even get better and more and stronger, and I think he's going to be at one of the power corners at right field. How can you understand that when it comes to baseball? But you have to have a guy who already had 1,200 yards in the league for you to extend him. Well, that's not the way it works, because generally speaking, if a guy is getting all of those touches, you're going to be paying way more money. You're going to be bidding for those guys. Like, yeah, like I get the fact that he wasn't putting up certain numbers, but what he was able to do is they took a look at it and said he's greatly improved in terms of blocking. We like the fact that he's one of the most athletic tight ends that is in the league. We feel like his hands are continuing to get better. And so we're giving him a contract now before the market explodes, or now before he comes out and we don't extend him and he has a great year. And now that price is going to be 2 or 3 times higher because we didn't get in front of this. And so what happens is this is what it looks like when you do get the development, because you start to see people like Bernie Kosar come back a few months ago and say, remember when we thought David Njoku really wasn't that good? Well, guess where he's looking and guess where he's at now. I guess you don't have a problem with the contract now, do you, boys?
Before I get to Bernie, I asked you guys the question, is Njoku the most underrated tight end in football? And Bernie sitting back here goes, let me get on this topic. So, Bernie.
I was coming through the screen on that. I've taken since David got here, what was it, Jay, 6-7 years ago? And as you guys.
He was the youngest player in the draft day.
And being one of the youngest guys, not even able to drink yet, being a first-round draft pick. And a lot of people joke with me about my bias towards him because of the University of Miami.
Yeah.
And I knew of him because of that. But his athleticism and his presence, and Jace, you probably see it a lot more than some of us in the locker room, is so dominant right now. And the way he's really galvanized, I believe, that locker room. And then playing as a tight end, this is, and I love Kittle, and I love the Kelce's, Travis Kelce and that, no question. But he now, I believe, can be talked at in that level. And his physical presence with our tackles, we talked about this the last 2 weeks here on the show. Man, I mean this to be funny, is I really don't exactly know who our tackles have been the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, they've done awesome, man. Yeah. It's unbelievable how awesome you guys have done. But having this tight end next to you right there, and for David Njoku to be making plays like that with his athleticism, but then being a stone-cold tough guy blocker at the end man of the line of scrimmage is one of the really big keys, I think, to this Joe Flacco resurgence of our offense and stuff. He's doing it in the passing game for sure, we see. But he's more impressive to me in what he's doing blocking in and around the line of scrimmage, and that makes him, to me, one of the best, if not the best all-around tight end in the NFL right now.
Go ahead and say that again. Don't take my word for it. See, what be happening is a lot of times, and y'all notice it, people tell me. See, a lot of times, because I am funny, I don't try to be. I just, because I do have a lot of facets to my personality, a lot of times people don't give me, credit for certain takes that I got because they think it's just like me being over the top or me being the Duke and knee jerk and leaning into that. But if you listen and if you watch it and you're an astute person, you go back and you say, well, listen, dang, G. Bush been right about a lot. Dang, he was right about DeJuan Jones. He told you that the Guardians was going to have to change their name. I was the first person to say, well, y'all are crazy, bro. How is it that you get mad at Kaepernick, but they let people fly Confederate flags? That's the most disrespectful thing to one flag is another one that was insurrectionists and traitors use. So for me, I've been telling you a lot of stuff. People, Odell Beckham was washed, and then they watched him in the Super Bowl. I told him, hey, look, 3-4 years in advance, hey, listen, Baker ain't going to get it done. You know what I mean? It just is what it is. I told you Flaccavelli was going for 300 3 weeks in a row. I was the guy who said P.J. Walker. Guess what? 49ers, we going to win that football game. There's a lot of different things I done said. If you go back and look at it, you're like, man, he was right about a lot of stuff. And the David Njoku contract is just one item on the pile of I told you that what it was. David Njoku, at that time, sometimes you see something in a person that other people is just looking at face value and stats. Now, those comments that we saw before are a stark comparison to what we saw then. Because now it ain't just G. Bush saying it. It's one of the best quarterbacks with one of the most respected football minds in the game saying it. And that hits different. But always remember that, everybody can be wrong. I just did a blog on Friday talking about why I was wrong about Kevin Stefanski. Ain't no harm and no foul. Just come back and own it. See, I'm the dude that own it. If I'm wrong, I come back and be like, that was me. I own it. I was tripping. But sometimes you got to remember the past and bring it back up so you don't make the same mistakes in the future. So as we talked about David Njoku and his lack of production and why you didn't see they should give him a contract, just remember that Jerry Jeudy's situation is strikingly has a lot of the same, looks from the outside when you talk about extensions and contract and money. Sometimes you're projecting, and the Browns did a great job of projecting with David Njoku because right now he is one of the best tight ends in the league, and that is not debatable. With that being said, what is debatable is that G. Bush is out. Yeah, we out of here. We got to get it going. You know what I'm saying? We make sure you check us out. We'll be back on Friday and bringing you another episode of the Ultimate Browns. You already know what I say, man. I might be on radio, television, or on the internet. Never forget that I got my Clippers at all times. And if you want G. Bush, all you got to do is listen to the Clippers. Have a great rest of your evening, and go Browns.